A massive creature photographed in a high mountain ridge, lake monsters rising out of the water, and a massive dogman creature known as the Black Walker of Smuggler's Notch. These are terrifying cryptids caught clearly on camera. These images may not look like much at first glance, but let's dig into the backstory here. So in November of 2005, a hiker named Randy Chase was near the top of Silver Star Mountain in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, and something unusual caught his eye across a snowy ridge. He lifted his camera and took a few pictures of what looked like this dark, upright figure moving down the hill. After that first shot, the subject stood up, or shifted. Chase snapped 2 more photos as it walked away into the snow-covered terrain. A week after these pictures were taken, Chase was interviewed by John Callender from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, or BFRO. Callender described Chase as honest and familiar with the outdoors and said the photos didn't look staged or hoax. Chase never claimed he knew exactly what he saw, just that it didn't look like another hiker or snowshoer. And the BFRO noted that the silhouette didn't have clear clothing lines or, a pack that you'd expect to see on someone up there in the deep snow. But what really makes these images impressive is that whatever this figure is, it's big, really big. Check this out. Another thing they did was scale tests. So they tried comparing the figure in the photo to what a normal human would look like in the same spot, taking into account the slope and distance, and look how much larger the figure in the original photos is compared to what an average-sized hiker looks like. Even the folks from the show Finding Bigfoot came back with Chase a few times to the same ridge, checking the angles and taking measurements. It'd be easy to assume a video like this is AI, but this footage was captured in 2009. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on this footage, but apparently it was captured in Smuggler's Notch, a mountain pass in Vermont. It's gotta be one of the strangest looking cryptid videos I've ever seen. It almost looks like it has the hind legs of a horse and like the torso and head of a wolf. Is this some really well done VFX, someone in a very convincing suit, or genuine footage of some unknown creature? Let us know what you think down below. This footage comes from cryptozoologist Paul Freeman, who's still considered one of the most respected names in the Bigfoot community. He shot this video in the Blue Mountains of Northeast Oregon in 1994, and it's often called one of the best Bigfoot videos ever captured. Freeman wasn't just known for video, though. He also made plaster casts of tracks he claimed were from Bigfoot. Those casts got a lot of attention because they showed dermal ridges, which is something you'd see on a real foot. Anthropologist Jeff Meldrum from Idaho State University studied them and considered them some of the most credible evidence out there. As for this video, is it real or a hoax? People still debate it. Could go either way. But unlike so many distant or blurry sightings, we do get a glimpse of a face here. It's not perfect, but you can kind of get a sense of what the creature might look like, which is why it's so frequently cited in discussions about Bigfoot evidence. I don't have much context for this next clip. Apparently it's CCTV footage captured at a school, though. It's hard to spot at first, but keep your eyes on the second floor. A dark figure dashes across the walkway at a pretty decent clip, too. It's semi-translucent and impossible to make out any features. Is it just a case of poor quality camera, or is something more mysterious going on here? What are all your thoughts? Leave your comments down below. One morning at Wellington Indoor Market in Telford, England, workers showed up and immediately knew something was off. Boxes were scattered everywhere, across the floor and down the stairs. The first thought was that someone must have broken in overnight, so they pulled up the security footage, expecting to see a person. What they got instead was a bit harder to explain. They watched as boxes suddenly tipped over and tumbled down the stairs. If you really focus, there is also a dark, shadowy shape moving up the staircase right before it happens. It's faint, but it's there, and what made it harder to brush off is that the market has been around since 1244 and already has a reputation for odd stuff. Staff have said they'll sometimes see strange shadows when working alone, and that one time, 2 people heard coughing in another part of the building only to find it completely empty. Doors slamming and hand dryers turning on by themselves have also been reported. Did you see that ghostly shape move across the field in the background? Nobody noticed it until they played the footage back later. This clip was posted to Reddit by a user named Elizabeth Greengirl88, titled, "Captured a spirit walking behind my husband on a security camera." After people started asking questions, Elizabeth jumped in and explained a few things. The footage came from a security camera that sends alerts to their phone whenever it detects movement. At the time, they were out in their farmland, not near a road or other houses. She said neither of them smokes, and there wasn't a fire going on, so smoke doesn't really make sense, and honestly, it doesn't really look like smoke anyway. They don't have pets, and no one else was around when this was recorded, at least not that they know. She also mentioned that an older man used to live on the land before they moved in, and he'd passed away prior to them buying the property. In 2023, a restaurant in Portsmouth, New Hampshire ended up with a story it didn't expect after its alarm system went off late at night. The place was the Library Restaurant, which sits inside the old Rockingham Hotel, a building that's had a reputation for ghost stories for a long time. After the alarms were triggered, the restaurant shared security footage on Facebook showing what they believed caused it. A few seconds into the video, a white misty-looking shape floats across the frame. Not long after that, police are seen in responding to the alarm. What made it strange was that the motion detectors that went off were inside the building, even though the movement was only seen outside. In their post, the restaurant explained, "Our building, the Rockingham, is well known for its ghosts, and notably the ones in the library basement. Last night, for the very first time, our motion detector alarms inside the building were set off by this camera motion, caught on video in the dead of night outside the window. The motion detectors inside cannot see what the camera outside sees. It is not lights from the car, because you can see how others are picked up, and there is no horizontal wind blowing, so what can this be? Make of it what you will, but this has never happened before." I don't know where this last clip originally comes from. Seems to be CCTV footage from a cafeteria or maybe a party room, but it is pretty odd. So the room is totally dark and empty, but then the door behind the bar lights up. A figure is standing by it. At first I thought it was just someone opening the door and walking in, but it doesn't quite look like that. I mean, I slowed the clip down and watched it again, and it's almost instantaneous. The door doesn't appear to swing open. Suddenly there's just this figure standing there surrounded by light. But it could definitely just be a case of bad camera quality, making it tough to figure out exactly what's going on, but the video continues. The figure moves its way behind the bar, and you notice it's not totally solid. It's this vague kind of white shape. And then the lights flick on, and the figure just isn't there anymore. And someone else walks into the room. They walk behind the bar and don't miss a step. I mean, if someone had crouched down behind there, the person would have noticed them. They certainly wouldn't just walk by like that. I don't know, it's a strange video, but if I were to tell you there was a mysterious figure in this image, what would you think I was talking about? I mean, you'd probably start scanning all the dark, shadowy areas, trying to pick out some vaguely human shape lurking in the corner, but no, the mysterious figure is actually the person right in the middle of the frame. Yeah, nobody knows who that is. This image was posted to Reddit by Defend Aloha. It comes from a friend of his named Kimberly. One night in August of 2019, Kimberly came home sometime between 1 and 2 in the morning. She was gonna head upstairs to let her dad know she was home, but then she heard a strange noise. She quickly checked the main floor before going upstairs. Everything seemed quiet, but the moment she reached the top of the stairs, the home alarm system went off. Her phone lit up with a warning saying an intrusion had been detected. Her dad rushed out of his bedroom and tried to get the rest of the family into one upstairs room while he checked the house. Room by room, everything looked normal until he opened the door leading into the garage. The garage door to the outside was wide open. Around the same time, Vivint, the security company, called to check if the family was safe. And since no one was found inside the house and there was no immediate threat, they ended the call. But then another alert came through. The security camera in the living room had detected movement and sent a notification including a video clip. This was the thumbnail. The problem was, when they played the actual video, there was nothing there. They scrubbed through frame by frame. It was just an empty room the entire time. The figure only shows up in that thumbnail. And no, it wasn't Kimberly. She wasn't wearing anything close to what the figure appeared to have on, and it certainly wasn't her dad. So just who or what the hell was creeping around their house that night? In 2022, on a Monday morning in Mississauga, a 36-year-old man had a medical emergency while driving, causing his car to crash and start smoking. And then thick black smoke started pouring from the vehicle. It was clear it was going to go up at any moment. Thankfully, two men, Ben Sykes and Fabricio Lauer, neither of whom knew each other by the way, saw what was happening and jumped into action. Both were on their way to work when they noticed the crash and rushed over. They tried to break the driver's side window, first with a foot, then an elbow, it just wasn't working. But then a guy in a dump truck tossed them a hammer, and they were able to smash the glass. Once the window broke, they pulled the unconscious driver out and dragged him to safety, just seconds before the car was fully engulfed in flames. Neither man thought about their own safety at the time. I didn't really think about it. You just sort of jump out and help, Sykes said. Lauer added, there was no hesitation. It was fight or flight. If that was you, you'd want someone to save you. Well, this is terrifying. This next piece of footage comes out of India. A woman somehow ended up dangling from a Ferris wheel, clinging to the bottom of a ride car, and as you could see, the ride kept going. God, stop the damn ride. And of course, the Ferris wheel cabins, they're not locked into place. They swing, right? So, it just makes things even worse. She's just hanging for her dear life. At first, the ride was going in the direction you'd want it to be going if you were dangling from the outside of it toward the ground. But then it starts reversing, heading back up as everyone is screaming for them to stop the damn ride. Finally, it does stop, but, up in the air, she's still dangling there, dangerously high above the ground. And then out of nowhere, some guy appears on top of the cabin and jumps in to help her. He grabs her arm, holds on tight so that she can safely slide back into the ride. In Christopher, Illinois, a firefighter got trapped after a house explosion this past April. He was standing by the front door when this huge explosion went off and the porch collapsed, pinning him under the debris. Watch this. This is nuts. Police officers, other firefighters, and some shirtless guy from the street all ran toward the house to lift a large piece of the collapsed porch to free him. Mind you, they don't know if another explosion's gonna happen, so this is pretty incredible. The firefighter ended up okay, no major injuries. The Christopher Police Department posted about it, saying, "We are thankful for all our firefighters and first responders. They have a very dangerous job, and today highlighted the dangers they face all too often. We are grateful that no one sustained major injuries. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Christopher firefighter for a fast and speedy recovery, and also with the family that lost their home during the tragedy." The house, of course, was a total loss, but thanks to everyone jumping in, the firefighter did get out alive. Lafayette, Indiana, a pizza delivery driver named Nicholas Belstick ended up doing way more than delivering dinner that night. On July 11th, 2022, around 12:30 a.m., he was out on a drive. He'd just been in a heated argument with his girlfriend and needed to clear his head, but then he spotted a house engulfed in flames. He stopped his car, turned around and pulled into the driveway, realizing that he couldn't just drive past. Bostic ran around the back of the house and went inside, yelling to see if anyone was trapped. At first, nobody answered, but instead of assuming everyone was safe, he went upstairs and found 4 kids. I went in through the back door, and the second step of the staircase is when I saw the faces coming out, and they ran past me. I followed behind, and then at the back porch, I asked them if there was anyone left in the house, he said. That's when he learned a 6-year-old girl named Taylani was still inside. Without hesitation, though, he went back in. He wrapped his shirt around his mouth and nose, crawled along the ground through the thick smoke, and just listened for her cries. He found her in the basement, carried her upstairs, and went through a window shoulder first with her in his arms. She made it to an ambulance that just arrived and ended up being okay. Bostic suffered severe smoke inhalation and first-degree burns and was hospitalized for a few days. He ended up becoming a family friend, and according to the father of the family,
God uses the most unlikely characters. He sent an angel.
It was a freezing night in Times Square back in November of 2012. NYPD officer Larry DePrimo was working his usual patrol when he spotted an older man sitting on the sidewalk with no shoes, just bare feet right against the concrete. DePrimo walked up and asked where his shoes were. The man just smiled and said, "It's all right, officer, I've never had a pair of shoes, but God bless you and thank you for doing what you're doing." And that really hit him, so DePrimo went straight into a nearby Skechers store and bought a $100 pair of all-weather boots and thermal socks out of his own pocket. He came back, knelt down, and helped the man put them on. "When I brought out the shoes, it was just a smile from ear to ear," he said later. He didn't even notice anyone watching, but an Arizona tourist named Jennifer Foster snapped a photo of the whole thing and posted it to the NYPD's Facebook page, and it blew up overnight. Hundreds of thousands of likes, tens of thousands of shares. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know who the cop was in the photo. DePrimo told reporters he hadn't expected any attention. "I told my mother, and that was it," he said. So this past June, a 6-year-old boy named Oscar was at a pool in Fort Lauderdale with his cousin. He tried to climb onto a pool float. He lost his balance and went under. He didn't know how to swim, and neither did his cousin, who just started screaming for help, unable to do much else. Over a minute and a half goes by as Oscar starts sinking to the bottom of the pool with his cousin desperately screaming for help. It is really hard to watch. Luckily though, a construction worker named Raku Ivan Campo happened to be walking by, and he heard the shouting. Without hesitation, he kicked off his shoes and dove in, grabbed Oscar from the bottom of the pool, and with the help of Oscar's cousin, was able to get him out of the water. But Oscar wasn't breathing, so Acampo started performing CPR, and it worked. When officers arrived, Oscar was breathing on his own. They asked him to squeeze their hand, then carried him to the paramedics. Acampo told the media afterward, "I didn't feel like a hero, I just did what I had to do. I feel good. I'm blessed to be able to have helped this kid." This is a cute one. So back in May, this driver's going down a desert road and spots a camel collapsed on the side. Obviously, it's completely wiped out, totally dehydrated, could barely lift its head. So the driver stops, gets out, grabs some water, pours it into a container for the camel, and slowly the camel lifts its head and starts drinking, and with each sip you can see it getting a bit of strength back. It's such a simple thing, but it is so nice to see. The thing is, camels are built for this stuff, right? They can go days without water. They're designed for the desert. But even they're starting to struggle now because, heat's getting more extreme and water sources are drying up. And when animals that literally evolved to survive in deserts are having trouble, it kind of tells you something about how tough conditions are getting out there. So this is a photograph of a snake, of course. Big deal. But the thing is, this image was supposedly captured from a helicopter. Here it is zoomed out. In August 1959, a Belgian military helicopter was heading back toward Kamina, flying over the Katanga region in what's now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. On board were pilot Colonel Remy Van Laird, along with 3 other men. One was an engineer named Adjutant Kint, who had his camera on him. From roughly 400 feet up, 2 of the men spotted something near a wrecked termite mound that looked like a fallen tree trunk. The problem was, it was moving. By the time they got Van Laird's attention, they'd already flown past it. So Van Laird turned the helicopter around and dropped lower. And that's when it became clear they were not looking at wood. It was a massive snake. Van Laird made several low passes while Kent rushed to get a photo. He managed one single shot before they were forced to leave, running low on fuel. The last thing they wanted to do was land near that massive serpent. All 4 men estimated the snake at about 14 meters long, or around 45 feet. It sounded ridiculous, but locals already had a specific name for snakes that big. Normal pythons were called moma, but giants like this were known as pumina. One settler had reportedly run into one years earlier along a nearby railway line. Years later, Van Laird said the head lifted several feet and claimed that if they'd gone any lower, it could have struck the helicopter. This is known as the Corfu Island creature, sometimes called the Grecian dolphin. It was first mentioned in 2015 after this strange photo started spreading online, taken off the coast of Greece. We see what looks like some sort of dolphin-like thing breaking the surface, but it's obviously not a normal-looking dolphin. The photo was taken near Parga by a Scottish tourist named Harvey Robertson. He was on a boat tour with his family, drifting through the sea caves, just trying to photograph the usual green color of the water. He didn't notice anything strange at the time, but later, while looking through his phone, he realized he'd caught something. In one photo, a gray shape rises out of the water. In the next, it's gone. Robertson said it looked like an elongated manatee. Some people just call this one a hoax, of course. Others think it may have actually been a real creature though, some sort of mutated animal. There's also another theory that this could be a surviving Ambulocetus, an extinct ancestor of whales. Here's some more well-known Sasquatch footage. Help, I think I saw a skunk ape. On October 28th, 2013, a Mississippi hunter named Josh Highcliffe uploaded an unsettling video to his YouTube channel. According to him, the footage was taken just west of Tunica, Mississippi. What he caught on camera looked like a large, dark, bipedal creature crouched low and almost hidden inside what appeared to be a hollow tree stump. At first, Highcliffe didn't think much of it, saying, "Initially, I thought it was a pig. Then I noticed these broad shoulders and a head held high with its hands. There was this huge black monster crouching near a dead cypress tree about 50 meters away. I immediately got scared and wanted to run away. I didn't even think about shooting. However, as soon as I realized that nobody would believe me, I felt like time had stopped. So he pulled out his phone and started recording, but then it stood up. And as it rose, it was suddenly clear how big this thing actually was. That's when Highcliffe panicked and took off. This series of images have become some of the most infamous sea monster photographs in history, aside from the Nessie photo we've all seen 600 times. Back in December 1964, a Frenchman named Robert Laceric was crossing Stonehaven Bay near Hook Island, Queensland, with his wife, kids, and his first mate. They just bought a motorboat and were basically living island life for a few months. While drifting over a shallow lagoon, Laceric's wife noticed something sitting on the bottom. It was massive, dark shape, stretched out and completely still. Laceric later described it as around 30 feet long, shaped like a giant tadpole. Smooth skin, no fins, no spines, no visible teeth, mostly black with faint stripes. Everyone on board thought it was dead, long enough that they actually got into the water to try and film it. And that's when it moved. As Laceric approached with the camera, the creature opened its mouth and started gliding toward them. They bolted back to the boat, and by the time they regrouped, the animal was gone. Photos of the creature spread in newspapers and magazines and quickly became infamous. Were these genuine images of an unknown sea creature, or was it just a case of clever angles? Or plastic sheets shaped and weighted underwater? Some said it may have been a giant swamp eel, but those rarely exceed 5 feet. And finally, we come to the undisputed king of unexplained creatures captured clearly on camera, the Patterson-Gimlin Sasquatch footage. Yes, it's been talked about to death, but not by me. This is actually the first time I've talked about the footage on this channel, which is impressive considering how many Bigfoot videos I've done. What can I say? This is still the best piece of video evidence we have for the creature. The camera is steady. We get a nice long shot of it walking across an open stretch of land. There's no trees blocking the view. It's not captured from too far away. There's just a reason why this is not just the best Bigfoot footage ever captured, but the best cryptid footage in general. There's still debate to this day as to how authentic this is. I've heard convincing arguments on either side, and it's really the continuing conversation surrounding this footage that's kept this one alive. People have analyzed every frame of this video, examining the creature's odd gait, what looks like a muscle moving under the fur. Hoax or not, it's a damn intriguing piece of footage, and that's why it's at the top of this list. This next clip was posted to Reddit by Gabber Flasm, who said the footage was sent to him from his mom's security camera. Watch the trees in the background here. Figure walks through the forested area behind the property and seemingly vanishes after crouching down. The Redditor said it's his brother in the video, and that he never heard or saw anyone at the time. And no nearby neighbors would be walking on the property like that either. And even if this was some stranger skulking through the forest, what's the explanation for them disappearing like that? This next video comes from the YouTube channel Aloha Treasures. So this woman has security cameras on the inside and outside of her home, and said that strange things had been going on lately. She'd been seeing things in the house, but she got confirmation one day when she saw a mysterious shadowy figure show up on the living room camera, standing in a doorway. So she jokes about how it could be her ex-husband breaking into her house, but I mean, yeah, it could be though. I mean, this is not a case of a bug on the lens or like dust floating around creating what looks like a shadowy shape. No, someone is definitely in that room. Ever seen a car accident involving a ghost? Well, you're about to. So these guys were cruising through the parking lot when something runs out in front of the car. A dark, shadowy shape. And this has nothing to do with the camera because the car stops and two people get out thinking they've hit something. Clearly they saw what the camera picked up. They look all over though, but find no signs of an injured animal or anything like that. Whatever the thing was, it wasn't there anymore. Reddit user 1ondo1ants posted this next clip. His motion-activated security camera picked up someone or something seemingly floating into his house. Luckily, there was no sign of an intruder though. In fact, those sliding doors by the back deck they were always closed and locked up at night. So his mind was partially at ease, but not entirely. What the hell was captured on camera here? It looks like it floats right through the glass. The footage left him pretty shaken up, and he doesn't really like thinking about it. His grandmother had died just months before this was captured, and his mom thought it was her watching over them. This fish was considered extinct. It vanished from records since the early 20th century. The Chell snakehead fish. Scientists hadn't seen it since specimens collected between 1918 and 1933 along India's Chell River. Then in 2024, a team led by Dr. Praveen Raj Jayas Aman finally caught and photographed 3 live specimens, confirming the Chell snakehead was still alive over 85 years after it went missing. It was so rare it became known as the world's most elusive snakehead. And the wildest part, locals in West Bengal had been catching and eating these fish the whole time without realizing they were eating something scientists thought was long extinct. As you can see, this tiny snake is shockingly small, just about 10 centimeters long, small enough to fit on a coin. It's called the Barbados thread snake, and after nearly 2 decades without a confirmed sighting, scientists were worried it had disappeared for good. But in March of 2025, land researcher Connor Blades and Justin Springer from Rewild decided to overturn hundreds of rocks in a little forest near a jack-in-the-box tree in Barbados. Blades said, "After a year of searching, you begin to get a little pessimistic." But they pressed on, and finally they did find one. The snake was transported live to the lab, filmed wriggling in a petri dish under a microscope, and finally identified. As Justin Springer put it, rediscovering one of our endemics reminds us that we still have something important left that plays an important role in our ecosystem. So, just goes to show you that tiny species can go missing for years, even on an island that's been mapped and visited by humans for hundreds of years. Next up, we have the Blide Rondevel flat gecko. For over 34 years, this little finger-sized gecko was only known from 2 specimens collected back in 1991, and many doubted it was even a real species. Then in May of 2025, researchers Aaron Peterson and John Davies from the Endangered Wildlife Trust were helicoptered into the remote canyon in South Africa's Blide River region, the same area where the original specimens were found. Well, in just a few days, they found about 20 to 30 of them, photographed 7 and collected tissue samples to prove it is a valid species. Darren Peterson said, "In terms of how we felt after hours of searching for the gecko and not finding it, we started to doubt whether the gecko still existed. When we found the first individual, well after midnight, we were ecstatic." He added that this rediscovery will allow the species to be officially reassessed and protected. Next on the list is the black-napped pheasant pigeon. This chicken-sized pigeon was last seen by scientists in 1882, and for more than 140 years, the only physical evidence of it was in dusty museum drawers, until September of 2022, when a conservation team used camera traps on Ferguson Island in Papua New Guinea to capture photos and video. Jordan Boersma, one of the lead researchers, said they had, quote, less than a 1% chance of catching it on camera, and then he described scrolling through the shots as the most surreal moment of his life. Co-leader John Mittermeier added, "Seeing those photos of the pheasant's pigeon felt like finding a unicorn." They spent a month trekking through rough terrain and setting up 20 camera traps. It was actually local hunters who pointed them in the right direction. Without their help, this bird probably would have stayed, quote-unquote, extinct. Now that it's been found again, the big focus is making sure its home doesn't get wiped out by logging. What you're looking at here is known as the Marvin the Monster footage. It was actually lost media for a long time, but it resurfaced about 8 months ago. The story behind it is that in the early 60s, Shell Oil was using an underwater robot called Mobot to scan the seafloor off the coast of Santa Barbara, looking for oil deposits. During one of those runs, usually dated to February 1961 or 1962, the robot's camera picked up something very strange. Floating in the water was this large creature that didn't dart away or vanish after a few seconds. It stayed in view for more than an hour, slowly moving in a very specific spiral pattern. The thing didn't swim like a fish or drift like debris. It rotated and coiled in on itself over and over. Scientists who looked at the footage thought it might be some kind of colonial sea creature creature, which is basically a single organism made up of lots of tiny connected animals that kind of live and move together. But that was just an educated guess. We still don't really know what this thing was. The full recording was never officially released. Only fragments and isolated frames still exist. In 2000, the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office received 2 anonymous photos showing a large, hairy, ape-like creature. The letter that came with them was from an elderly woman who'd been noticing apples disappearing from her back porch. She claimed she snapped the pictures after spotting this creature, worried it might be an escaped orangutan. The images quickly earned the nickname Mayaka skunk ape and are still some of the clearest images ever taken of not just the skunk ape, but any Bigfoot-like creature, in my opinion. At the time, a bunch of skeptics pointed out that the creature looks similar to a Bigfoot statue that used to be displayed at a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum, but looking at that statue, yeah, it's a pretty weak comparison. I mean, they're both hairy, but that's pretty much where the similarities end. Reports of the skunk ape go back to 1929, and there are still reports to this day. Since 2010, sightings have been recorded in 48 out of Florida's 67 counties. Back in 2022, a man named Henry Hayes was out jogging in Merrickville, Sydney, when he came across whatever the hell this thing is. It was sitting on the street after days of heavy rain. In Harry's own words, "My gut says it's some kind of embryo, but with the pandemic, World War III, and the floods going on right now, this could very well be an alien," end quote. He grabbed his phone and started poking the tiny creature with a stick. It didn't move at all. He posted the video to Instagram. Some people guessed it was a shark embryo or a mutated tadpole. Others agreed with the alien theory, but even biologists were puzzled by the thing. Elia Lisa, a zoologist, posted the pic herself saying, "Hey world, what is this thing? I thought possum/glider embryo, but I have no context or scale and none of my peers can agree. What is this? Hashtag mystery blob." And to this day, we still have no definitive explanation. This video comes from 2001, but it was shared online in April of 2006. I remember watching it in the very early days of YouTube. It was one of the first supposed Bigfoot videos I watched aside from the Patterson-Gimlin footage. And if you're looking for a creature caught clearly on camera, well, this is better than 90% of the Bigfoot caught on camera videos you'll find all over the internet. And it looks pretty convincing. The fur doesn't look like something you'd see on a cheap costume, and there's shape to the creature, and what looks like visible muscle under the fur. The footage was captured by a man named Harley Hoffman, who kind of went off the radar not too long after this video hit the web. Does that mean he hoaxed the whole thing and just didn't want to keep up the lie? Is the footage genuine, but he just had a hard time handling all the attention? Who knows, but when it comes to Sasquatch footage, this is still one of my favorite clips. This piece of footage was captured at a home in North Carolina. The video was posted to Reddit by Whole Negotiation 1843. The homeowners were terrified when they got a notification from their home security camera. They were expecting maybe a raccoon or something, but when they saw this pale, spindly thing, they immediately called the cops. As for what to report, well, at first they thought it was some naked dude crawling through the yard, but it didn't take them long to realize this thing did not look human. As for what it was then, the case has yet to be solved. In 2015, researchers studying underwater volcanoes near the Solomon Islands ended up filming something they weren't even looking for: a massive shark that wasn't supposed to be there. Brennan Phillips, a PhD student at the University of Rhode Island, had been dropping baited cameras called drop cams into the deep sea to check out life near an active volcano called Cavachi. One of those cameras went down over 3,000 feet and came back with a bit of a surprise. When the team downloaded nearly 8 hours of footage, they spotted what looked like a giant brown blob in one of the thumbnails. Phillips said, "Both of us looked at each other and said, we gotta look at that thumbnail right now." When they opened the file, they started yelling. They just filmed a sleeper shark, something nobody expected to see that far south. "We were freaking out," Phillips said. Experts later said the shark was probably a Pacific sleeper shark. And if that's the case, it means this was the farthest south anyone had ever seen a Pacific sleeper shark. Sleeper sharks are rarely filmed alive at all. They usually live deep, can grow over 20 feet long, and decompose quickly when brought up, so they're pretty hard to study. In November of 2021, researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute were out with their ROV called Doc Ricketts when they came across a giant phantom jelly. Very, very rare sight. It showed up almost a kilometer underwater in Monterey Bay. Its bell alone is over 3 feet wide, and then it trails 4 long arms that can stretch more than 30 feet. It's massive. Now, MBARI has done thousands of dives. They've only ever spotted this jelly a small handful of times. In fact, since the species was first collected back in 1899, there have maybe been 100 confirmed encounters worldwide. It seems to live all over the planet, in every ocean except the Arctic, but because it lives so deep down, it basically stays hidden from us. Before we had high-tech cameras, scientists tried to study creatures like this using trawl nets. That worked for fish and squid, but with jellies, it was basically useless. They just turn into mush. Now with ROVs shooting high definition, even 4K video, we're finally seeing the phantom jelly the way it actually looks in its natural habitat. Back in 2000, Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute's ROV Tiburon was out exploring the deep off Monterey Bay when researchers saw something they couldn't really place. Nobody knew what to call it, so they just nicknamed it the mystery mollusc. Over the next 20 years, MBARI kept spotting it more than 150 times, and finally, after a lot of work in the lab, they confirmed it's actually a brand new kind of sea slug called this. This thing lives in the midnight zone, thousands of feet down. Unlike most sea slugs that crawl on the seafloor, this one kind of swims in open water. To eat, it uses that giant hood-like thing on its head, almost like a Venus flytrap, snapping it shut on its tiny prey. It's also bioluminescent. Researchers even saw it detach one glowing finger-type thing from its tail as a decoy to confuse predators. When we first filmed it glowing with the ROV, everyone in the control room let out a loud "ooh" at the same time, said scientist Stephen Haddock. DNA tests also showed that it's so different from other sea slugs, it's enough to get its own separate group in the sea slug family tree. As MBARI's Bruce Robinson put it, our discovery is a new piece of the puzzle that can help better understand the largest habitat on Earth. The ruby sea dragon wasn't officially identified until 2015, which is crazy, because that made it the first new sea dragon discovered in 150 years. Washed up specimen had actually been found back in 2007, about 9 inches long, but nobody realized it was a whole new species until later. Unlike the leafy or common sea dragons that have those long decorative frills, the ruby sea dragon looks a little plainer, with short, stumpy lobes. The name comes from its color, obviously bright red. Scientists think that's not just for show. In deeper water, red light, it disappears fast, which actually makes red animals harder to see, so it works kind of like camouflage. That explains why these guys managed to stay hidden for so long, plus they live deeper than most divers can safely go, which meant no one had ever filmed one alive until 2016. That year, researchers used a remote underwater camera up the coast of Western Australia and finally caught one on video, and the footage was published in 2017. One of the weirdest parts of this animal is its tail. Unlike other sea dragons, the ruby sea dragon has a prehensile tail. Basically, it can grab onto things like a chameleon does. Last year, a team of international scientists just blew the lid off one of the most unexplored areas of the ocean. During a Schmidt Ocean Institute expedition to the Salas by Gomez Ridge, a remote range of underwater mountains stretching from Chile to Rapa Nui, they discovered 160 species that hadn't been recorded in the region before, and they think at least 50 of those might be completely new to science. This campaign found between 50 and 60 potentially new species at first sight, a number that is likely to increase, as we have many samples to work on in the laboratory, said one of the lead researchers from the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. The team documented everything from deep-sea corals and sponges to squids, crabs, and fish. The 40-day expedition included 25 scientists from 5 countries, plus the first Rapa Nui marine biologist, Amelia Ra'apalmatuki. Plesiosaur is one of those creatures everyone's been, of course told is long gone, but stories about it keep popping up. For over 100 years, people have claimed to see long-necked flippered animals in lakes and oceans all over the world. Loch Ness in Scotland, Lake Champlain in Vermont, even up the coast of Japan, and we're not talking about tourists who just want a good story, not always anyway. Some seasoned sailors and fishermen will also swear they saw something out there. Probably the wildest case was in 1977 when a Japanese fishing boat pulled up this decaying carcass near New Zealand. The thing had a long neck, flippers, and looked eerily like a plesiosaur. Scientists just said it was a decomposing basking shark. Others weren't so sure. The resemblance was just a little too on the nose. This is a megamouth shark that was spotted off Indonesia. This species is very rarely seen. People didn't even know it existed until 1976. They can grow up to 18 feet long and feed by filtering plankton through their huge mouths. Megamouths live so deep that almost all footage of them comes from deep-sea submersibles, or accidentally they get caught in fishing nets. The megamouth shark was discovered totally by accident in 1976. Unlike most sharks that chase and bite, the megamouth just cruises along with its mouth open, scooping up tiny plankton and jellyfish, almost like a whale. It's such a strange way to feed for a shark, and again, no one had ever seen one until a random encounter with a US Navy ship's anchor line, and since then, only a handful have ever been spotted. About 6 years ago, Ocean X managed something that had never been done before. They tagged this blunt-nosed sixgill shark straight from a submersible, no bringing it to the surface first. Now, these sharks are living fossils. They've been around long before most dinosaurs existed, and they barely ever show up on camera. So this footage you're looking at here is almost like catching a glimpse of what the deep waters of Earth looked like hundreds of millions of years ago. News of this just came out a few months back. Scientists finally filmed a colossal squid in its own habitat for the very first time. Not a washed up carcass or something snagged by accident, but a living juvenile cruising through the Southern Ocean near the Sandwich Islands, about 2,000 feet down. Kat Ballstead, a squid researcher at Auckland University of Technology, confirmed the footage and said, "This is the first confirmed footage of the colossal squid at home in the deep sea. This is honestly one of the most exciting observations we've had," end quote. Now, the squid they caught on camera was only about a foot long, but adults can reach up to 23 feet and weigh over 1,100 pounds, making them the biggest invertebrate on Earth. Their eyes alone are massive, about the size of a soccer ball. Squid expert Aaron Evans actually said he started hyperventilating when he saw the footage come through. For good reason too. Most of what we know about colossal squid comes from dead ones, pulled up by fishing nets or from pieces found inside sperm whale stomachs. Kat Ballstead explained why they've been so elusive, saying they know we're there long before we know they're there. They are actively avoiding us. This is a photograph of a coelacanth taken in Indonesia for the first time. This is the Indonesian coelacanth, a species scientists believed had gone extinct for 70 million years. Marine biologist Alexis Chapuis spotted it while diving in the Maluku archipelago about 475 feet below the surface. Back in 1938, a coelacanth was pulled up in a fishing net off South Africa, and it was described as one of the biggest natural history discoveries of the 20th century. Since then, sightings have been rare. In 2013, Laurent Balesta managed to photograph wild coelacanths at Sodwana Bay, South Africa, but that was the other known species. The Indonesian coelacanth is different. Researchers are keeping the exact dive location secret for now because the fish are so sensitive to changes in their environment. They don't want people flocking to the area to try and spot one themselves, let alone trying to haul them out of the water. Just back in May, a diver off Indonesia snapped the first ever photos of a live Indonesian coelacanth in its natural habitat. This is a huge deal, because while coelacanths were once thought to have gone extinct 70 million years ago, only 2 species are known to still exist today. There was one caught on camera back in 2013. That was a West Indian Ocean coelacanth found near South Africa. This new sighting is a totally different species, first time it's ever been photographed alive in Indonesia. The fish was spotted in the Maluku archipelago, about 475 feet deep. Marine biologist Alexis Chapuis from Unseen Expeditions was the one who saw it. And diving that deep is not easy. He had to use mixed gas diving, which comes with serious risks like decompression sickness if you mess up the timing. You can also die if you mess up the timing. Blank Pain, the watch company that helped fund the dive, called coelacanths often mistakenly called a living fossil or dinosaur fish, and pointed out they've been around for over 400 million years, long before dinosaurs. The Kashmir musk deer is one of those animals people thought was long gone. No confirmed sightings since 1948. Most experts assumed it had gone extinct. But then in 2009, a research team working in the forests of northeast Afghanistan, they spotted one. There were multiple sightings, including images of live ones on camera traps. Suddenly, an animal believed to be wiped off the map was back. These deer are super elusive. They're small, shaggy, they don't have antlers. Instead, the males have these long, fang-like teeth that look like vampire tusks. It's pretty wild. They also produce musk, which is highly valuable and unfortunately has made them a target for poaching for hundreds of years. That's part of why people thought they were gone. As one of the team members told reporters at the time, this is the first time we've been able to confirm the species is still out there since the 1940s. Now the challenge is making sure that they stay out there. The pygmy tarsier is this tiny, big-eyed primate that looks like a cross between a Furby and a gremlin. It's nocturnal, lives in trees, and hadn't been seen alive since the 1920s. So for decades, people figured it had gone extinct. But then in 2008, a team hiking in Indonesia's Lor Lindu National Park suddenly came across one. Not only did they see it, they actually managed to trap it. The team includes Dr. Sharon Gursky-Doyen from Texas A&M University, who said it was like finding a living fossil. They were hiking up steep mountains, setting traps high in the forest canopy, and boom, there it was. Tarsiers are incredibly hard to spot. They're tiny, quiet, they live way up in the trees, only moving around at night. But what makes the pygmy tarsier different is its size. It's even smaller than the others and only found in a very specific misty patch of forest in Sulawesi. The Cuban solenodon is an animal that seemed to vanish off the face of the earth until someone randomly spotted it and proved everyone wrong. This weird little creature is native to Cuba and looks kind of like a rat with a long, twitchy snout. And would you ever guess that it has venomous saliva? Because it does. It's one of the only mammals on Earth that can inject venom. People thought it had gone extinct way back in the 1970s. Nobody had seen one since 1890, and for a while was basically written off. That changed in 1974 though, when not one but 3 solenodons were caught alive. But even after that, sightings stayed extremely rare. It wasn't until 2003 that another one popped up, and this one got a name: Alejandrito. Scientists studied him for a couple days, found he was perfectly healthy, and then released him back into the wild. Problem is that the Cuban solenodon is ridiculously hard to find. It burrows underground, only comes out at night, and lives in dense mountain forests. And because it only has 1 litter per year, it doesn't bounce back easily. The terror skink sounds like something out of a 50s monster movie, but it actually sorta lives up to the name. The lizard was first described way back in 1876, and then it just disappeared. For over 130 years, scientists assumed it had gone extinct. No one had seen one alive. But that changed in 2003 when researchers in New Caledonia came across a live one. The terror skink is nearly 2 feet long, has curved fang-like teeth that are actually strong enough to tear through crab shells. It's an apex predator that hunts birds, crabs, also other reptiles. When it was finally photographed alive, scientists were stunned, not just that it was alive, but that it had gone unnoticed for such a long time despite being such a fierce hunter. Since then, it's only been seen a handful of other times. For the longest time, the giant squid was like a sea monster from folklore. Sailors would tell stories of encounters with them, but no one had ever captured photographic or video evidence. Marine biologist Richard Ellis even called it the, quote, most elusive image in natural history. And he wasn't wrong. In the 90s, there was a photo going around that claimed to show a diver next to a giant squid, but it turned out to be a different species. A big squid, sure, but not the squid. It wasn't until 2001 that we even got video of a baby giant squid. And then in 2002, someone in Japan found a full-grown one washed up on a beach, still alive, but barely. They tied it up by the docks and it died overnight. At least they got a picture. The real breakthrough came through in 2004. 2 Japanese scientists dropped a camera 3,000 feet into the ocean with some bait. After 20 tries in 1 day, bam, a massive squid latched on. It thrashed so hard it left a tentacle behind. They ended up with over 500 photos and finally proved the thing was not just real, but actively hunting. Then in 2012, we finally got the money shot. Clear video of a giant squid. It was missing its feeding tentacles, probably from a fight with a sperm whale. It came in slowly, drawn by fake jellyfish lights and some bait, and it let them film for about 23 minutes. Kite surfer to the rescue. On January 10th in São Luís, Brazil, Olympic kite surfer Bruno Lobo was training when he started hearing cries for help. Those cries led him to a woman struggling to stay afloat in the water. Lobo got off his kiteboard, put the woman on his back, and brought her safely to shore. Lobo later posted about it on Instagram, saying, "After sailing a few meters, I heard a cry for help and looked at the girl who was drowning. I quickly approached her with the kite, tried to calm her down, and asked her to climb on my back. She was quite tired and without strength. I used the equipment to bring her safely to the sand where the lifeguards performed first aid, and thank to God, everything went well." Drowning in a sinking car. It's one of my worst fears. I don't know about you. Well, I don't know where this was filmed, but what you're watching here is a dude jump into this water to save a woman and her dog who were trapped in that car. Incredible. Hope that never happens to me. Queensland, Australia. A woman shared a video of a postman doing something really simple, but really thoughtful. He just delivered a package when he noticed it was starting to rain. Now, instead of leaving right away back to his car, he went into the yard and took down the woman's bed sheets from the clothesline so that they wouldn't get soaked in the rain. What a nice guy. The CCTV footage went viral. Again, this is a small gesture, but it really does go a long way. I mean, imagine if we all did stuff like this. We've talked about people being saved from burning homes or near drowning so far, but it doesn't always have to be big and dramatic. Sometimes it's just about paying attention and taking a little extra time for someone else. Makes an impact. I'm sure most of you have seen this image before. It's probably the most famous photo of a supposed sea monster aside from Nessie. The picture was taken at Lake Champlain, a freshwater lake between New York and Vermont, known for a legendary creature called Champ, sometimes called Champy. The first recorded sightings go way back. People have been reporting strange things in the water for hundreds and hundreds of years, but the piece of evidence most people talk about is a photograph taken on July 5th, 1977, by a woman named Sandra Mancy. On a summer day, Sandra and her family were near the northern Vermont shore when her kids were wading in the shallow bay. About 150 feet out, she suddenly saw something rise up from the water. It had a long neck, a head, and a hump, all visible for several minutes before disappearing again. Sandra grabbed her Kodak camera and managed to snap a single shot before the thing disappeared back under the water. That image, now one of the most famous lake monster photos ever published, appears to show part of a creature with a dark head, a curved neck, and a back breaking the surface of the lake. Over the years, hundreds of people have claimed to see something unusual in Lake Champlain. Ripples, humps, and shapes moving just under the surface. But this photo is still seen as one of the best pieces of visual evidence that keeps believers coming back to the lake each summer. So this next guy spotted something perched on top of a dead tree in his backyard. He thought it was a cat at first, but when he looked harder at it, he realized it wasn't like any cat he'd ever seen before. So he pulled out his phone to get a closer look, and this is what he captured. Now, he says in the video it's a monkey, which is possible. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a monkey expert. There aren't many monkeys roaming around here in Canada, but this thing doesn't really look like a monkey to me. Looks kind of like a cat-goat hybrid, gargoyle type creature. One person in the comments said, "Bro, it's a cat skull emoji." Apparently, you just can't be Gen Z without peppering in a bro and or skull emoji. Alternatively, you can add a crying laughing emoji as well. In the summer of 2000, Jim Mills, a youth leader with a passion for the great outdoors, organized a trip to Marble Mountain for a group of young campers. But as they hiked deeper into the wilderness, surrounded by the trees and the sounds of nature, none of them could have predicted what they were about to see. During one of their hikes, as the group ascended a ridge, they noticed something in the distance. It was this large, dark figure stood on a ridge in the distance, seemingly watching them. The figure's size and posture immediately caught the attention of Mills, who quickly grabbed his video camera and started to film. The footage shows this tall creature walking upright along the ridge. There was an ease about its strides, as if it were perfectly familiar with the rough terrain, and judging by the footage and how far away the camera was, the creature looks to stand around 7 or 8 feet tall. Throughout the video, you hear Mills remarking on how long the thing's arms are, and whatever it was, it seemed agitated. Can't hear it very well on camera, but the group said it appeared to be yelling at them while aggressively waving its arms at times, as if to scare them away. Now, I want you to imagine, if you will, that you're out in the woods on a hike, alone. You spot what looks like something poking out behind a tree. It's dark, you can't really make it out. Is it part of the tree, you ask yourself? You're afraid to get any closer, unsure if it's a wild animal, but the longer you look, the clearer it becomes it's not an animal. It's some sort of humanoid shape, but shadowy and perfectly silent, and it's staring at you. No more walks in the forest for me. This next video popped up on Reddit a few years ago. It was filmed in Louisiana. A few guys are recording some deer grazing in a field, but then out of the tree line comes this thing. At first glance, it almost looks like it's galloping, but it's definitely not a horse. Doesn't move like a human either, though. First of all, It's super fast, large, and its front limbs are insanely long. Whether this is something explainable or not, it is definitely a weird clip. This footage comes from Todd Standing, a guy who's pretty well known in the Bigfoot community for some of the more famous alleged sightings out there. According to him, this video shows his first close-up encounter with one of the creatures. After it walked away, Todd and some of his team went up the cliff to check out just how big it might have been, and from what they could tell, it looked like the thing could have been well over 8 feet tall. The footage got enough attention that it even showed up in an episode of Finding Bigfoot. On the show, they tried to recreate the scene by having one of the bigger guys on the team stand on that same ledge to see how he compared. The creature in Todd's video was noticeably taller and bulkier than the guy they used for comparison. And most of us have seen this footage, and for good reason. Unlike so many supposed Bigfoot videos, we get a good long look at this creature, much like the Patterson-Gimlin footage, and on top of that, this version of the creature looks a lot like the one in that infamous film from 1967. The footage was captured on Independence Day in 2013. What also stood out to people about this video is that the creature appears to be carrying an infant. Can't say I've ever seen that before. Doesn't mean it's not a hoax, but it does mean they put in some extra effort if it is. Some people think it's just a good quality suit, some think it looks super legit.